Welcome back to Movies TV Mad, and welcome to Saturday's edition of the DCU Daily. Being a man who was brought up by a man who worked in this industry all of his life, I'm shocked and stunned to my very, very existence and core that James Gunn has done an interview with Josh Horowitz's Happy and Confused podcast just over a week after he globally released his Superman movie. This is something that Steven Spielberg wouldn't do. This is something that Peter Jackson wouldn't do. This is something that Kevin Feige at Marvel Studios wouldn't do. And at that very interview, he name-dropped Kevin. Apparently he wrote to him recently after seeing Superman, "You've got to do Bizarro." Name-dropping Kevin Feige isn't going to win you any friends because he hasn't got the cool points he used to have. I thought they were so utterly happy with this box office, but this desperate interview on this podcast proves that they are nervous, they are panicked, and they are scared. Because once you keep on talking about all the other projects you're going to do, and you're not talking about your current movie, well, there's actually a very good reason for that. Because you're not happy with the domestic box office. You cannot be happy with the international box office, which is a disaster. By the way, Gunn stands saying that China don't know anything about cinema. Do you know anything about film? Asian cinema is one of the most beautiful art forms there is, right? So why don't you just shut the fuck up? You know nothing. It's not China who know nothing. It's you. There's a reason that this movie is bombing internationally. Because they want Henry Cavill as Superman. They want a more sophisticated take on Superman. Not this mamby-pamby beta man. They don't want that. Nobody wants that. Oh, Crypto, stop. Leave my leg alone. Oh, Crypto. Oh, boo-hoo, I'm being beaten up again. I'm angry, I'm passionate, I am a good person. People don't want to see that. That's not how you represent Superman. And the sophisticated international audience actually know that. And that's why it's bombing internationally. But once he started mentioning Henry Cavill yet again in that Happy and Confused podcast, we now know how nervous he is and how nervous this studio is about the box office and the future of the DCU. This wasn't the huge launch they were hoping for, but they knew this weeks in advance when they were saying we don't need 700 million. People saying we need 700 million is nonsense. We don't need to make a profit. We don't need to make money. Why do we need to make money? We only call ourselves an entertainment industry. Well, if you're an industry, you need to make fucking money, right? So he's there, right? And he said something very, very telling in this interview as well, by the way. He said the day he was announced as the co-CEO of DC Studios was the day that Henry Cavill apparently was being announced, or some nonsense he was saying. Apparently it coincided with Henry Cavill apparently coming back as Superman as well. Or that's the day when they told him behind the scenes of Warner Brothers Discovery he was getting the gig. So again, he's trying to reiterate that Henry Cavill being announced as coming back as Superman had nothing to do with him. He's trying to distance himself from this situation. You only make statements like that when you're nervous, when you know that your Superman isn't working for people, that they want the previous actor who played Superman back. And it's absolutely fine for people like Brandon Routh or Henry Cavill's age to be playing Superman. In fact, my Superman script, Superman versus the Elite, is an older Superman who could be Henry's age or could even be Brandon Routh's age. I think Brandon's slightly older than Henry Cavill. That would make sense, seeing that he played Superman in 2005, and I think he was about 26 or something back then, so it was a bit of a time ago as well. But you can easily have Brandon playing Christopher Reeve's Superman. In my Superman versus the Elite story, although I'd have to cut certain things out. Because my Superman, by the way, is a Superman that's been around for decades. Basically throughout human history. Obviously, Christopher Reeves' Superman wasn't. But you could use Brandon Routh as a brand new Superman. You could use Henry Cavill as a brand new Superman. I know that Snyder fans want Henry to be part of the Snyderverse. Will Zack ever get the freedom of Warner Brothers again? Well, it's as likely as it is unlikely, but the Snyderverse fans are becoming a big problem to Gunn, Saffron, and the DC Studios logo, because it's not a real studio, it's just a logo, by the way. They're becoming a problem. That's why he's desperately gone on this podcast. Do you really think that Josh Horowitz gets to ask any question that he wants? No. They're pre-aligned questions. There's a reason that Gunn is talking about Cavill. He said that he took it like a gentleman. He was very, very polite when he was told he wouldn't be Superman. That wouldn't be my attitude. I wonder if that's even true. Because if I had been as messed about by a studio as Henry Cavill has, I wouldn't have been taking anything lying down. They benched him after Justice League. They wouldn't even, wish him a happy fucking birthday like they do everyone else who's ever fucking worked for them, right? The treatment from WB to Henry Cavill was absolutely disgusting. So make no mistake, there's a reason he did that Josh Horowitz Happy and Confused podcast. Because they're nervous, they're shattered, and they're worried about this box office. Because Iron Man made over $800 million globally. It was beloved, it was a great launch pad for Marvel Studios, which at that point was a little independent studio. DC Studios is a logo owned by a huge studio. And James Gunn is now learning, when you're a co-CEO of a logo owned by a studio, you can't have everything your own way. We're now finding out that Superman being the launchpad for DCU was actually David Zaslav, who has no scripted entertainment experience, idea. I said it was him who was pushing it from the very beginning. If you're a long-running viewer of Movies TV Mad here on YouTube, you'll know I said that. Gunn doesn't care about Superman. We know the kind of characters that Gunn's interested in. They should never, first of all, they should never have launched the DCU with Superman. Superman's difficult. He is difficult. But you make the job even more difficult when you either make a divisive Superman movie or a cringy, terrible Superman movie. So Man of Steel is a great movie that's divisive, and Superman is a cringy movie that doesn't work for a hell of a lot of people. By Monday, they would have made just over 400 million. So within 10 days after its opening weekend, they've doubled what they've made. Now, despite what the shills and the access media are saying, so they should. In fact, they should have made more money on this movie, but it's so bad and people are so disinterested in Cape Ship right now, bad Cape Ship, that's the problem. Now, Josh Horowitz, getting this interview is very interesting. It's a good get for him. I'm sure he's very, very happy. Upscales the podcast. But at the end of the day, this has been done out of desperation. Now, Josh, who founded the Den of Nerds or Den of Geeks or whatever it is, on his show was saying they need to get Batman out there. They need to get Matt Reeves' Batman 2 out of the way, then get their Batman and get their Wonder Woman. I don't agree, Josh, by the way. Let me explain to you why. Once we see the Batman 2, we are going to be so happy and hyped by that sequel because, if nothing else, Matt Reeves is a genius. I assume that he's not actually dying, and Grace Randolph was fucking lying. The woman should get sued, mate. This woman is fucking outrageous. This man looks healthier than a newborn fucking baby. And she was spreading nonsense about. Anyway, glad he's all right. Seems like a lovely dude. He's a genius. I love him as a writer-director. And he made a great first attempt at a Batman movie. Now, I would have preferred Ben Affleck's The Batman movie. That would have been great with Deathstroke and all of that. That would have been amazing. We lost out. We got done dirty. Ben got done dirty. But that's not Matt Reeves' fault. It's not Matt Reeves' fault. He made a great movie, right? And I enjoyed it. And I can't wait for the sequel. Matt's problem is the more Gunn aligns himself with this movie, the more Gunn will hurt this movie. If Matt Reeves is allowed to put his insignia and stamp on this movie like he did the first movie, he was going out there talking to fans, making it clear this was his movie. But if Gunn interferes with this movie will be toast as well. I always said that we shouldn't have had another connected universe. It's obvious what they should have done. They should be releasing one DC movie every 3 years, and they should be standalone, unconnected, with different creatives. And if you want to do trilogies of those standalone takes, you should be allowed to do that. But nothing should be connected. If you want to do animation, do animation. Do whatever you fucking want. But this connected universe thing was never going to work. But even if you do a connected universe and your movies are great, then of course it's going to fucking work. The problem is, from the moment Gunn came in, he had a pre-existing Batman. And there's been this to and from in between Gunn and Matt Reeves. Gunn's tried everything to try and get Robert Pattinson's Batman as part of the DCU. Because you can't have two Batmen, that's the problem. Because once Matt Reeves' The Batman 2 comes out, it's going to cook, it's going to be amazing. Who's going to be interested in a fucking DCU Batman? Fucking no one. That's who. That's the problem. That's why you can't have two Batmen. Gunn isn't capable of going toe-to-toe with Reeves and creating a more interesting or as interesting version of Batman. The DCU Batman may never happen, but we'll wait and see. Gunn also spoke about his next movie after Superman. He said it's not a standalone Superman sequel. It's not the world's finest. So now we know it's not the world's finest. Could it be Superman versus the Authority? Because he did say, because originally in the slate there was going to be a Gods and Monsters, phase 1, and the Authority was part of Gods and Monsters phase 1. Then they put the Authority in the back burner. It could be because Gunn is going to write, or is writing, Superman versus the Authority. He said Superman will be very important in that movie. Does that mean they talk about Superman in that movie? Or is Superman actually in that movie? Imagine if they do Superman so dirty that apparently he's so important in the next movie, and in Gunn's follow-up DCU movie, that he's not even in it. We'll have to wait and see for that. But make no mistake, this interview on this podcast is the act of the biggest of desperation and panic. It means they are not happy with the box office at home or abroad. They know it's bad, they know they're in trouble, and the reason he mentioned Cavill in that interview, on that podcast, because they know. Because the Cavill fans and the Snyder fans have made a huge dent. And it doesn't matter how often people say, they're a toxic fan base, they're the monkeys from Superman. It doesn't matter. You're saying that because they're making a dent. They're hurting what you attempted to do. And ultimately, James, all you had to do was step outside of yourself and make a great Superman movie. Have your own thing to say about this character, and you don't. You inserted an MCU, Guardians of the Galaxy, Superman movie. And like Man of Steel, it simply didn't work for enough people. Christopher Reeve is the only actor ever to get a solo direct sequel to his first movie. It's different when you make a movie for everyone. You see, one of the hugest problems in New Hollywood and in entertainment, Western English-speaking entertainment generally, is how so self-indulgent the industry is, how self-indulgent movie writers and directors are today. I love the Snyderverse, but it's utterly self-indulgent. It's made for the people creating it. It's made for Snyder and what he wants to say about these characters, and especially Superman, right? This Superman movie is also self-indulgent. It's about Gunn being cancelled. It's about having mutant monkeys being like people on the internet and mocking people on the internet for being toxic and spreading rumours. You know, you've got Lex Luthor, who's kind of a Donald Trump. It's self-indulgent. And this is why their industry has fucking collapsed. Because they're self-indulgent, lazy, creatively bankrupt bastards. It's as simple as that. And if they actually just made great movies and if they weren't so self-indulgent, this movie wouldn't collapse. Just look at the summer box office. It's crap. Even Jurassic World Rebirth, that's made loads more than Superman. It's making what Superman at the very least should be making, and it's not. But all of them have underachieved, right? They've underachieved. Superman has underachieved. Jurassic Rebirth has underachieved. And it looks like Fantastic Four First Steps will also underachieve. What I mean by underachieving is not making what the MCU movies were making in Phase 2 and Phase 3. So they tried to bring back the summer box office after getting rid of it, but when you make subpar content, subpar movies, no one is coming to your party.